the kingdom of Odom was on the edge of collapse. King Zubri, dying and desperate, had made an impossible proclamation.
Return with a wonder worthy of the gods, and you shall rule.
His 6 sons, each more ambitious than the last, set off on separate quests, hoping to claim the throne for themselves. But what they didn't know was that their path to power would lead them to the ocean's depths, and to a force more powerful than they could ever imagine. In the shadowy depths of a cursed sea, Juma, the warrior prince, believed he was chasing the fabled sword of Alakan. But what he discovered beneath the dark waves was far more dangerous. Azira, a mermaid whose haunting beauty concealed a wisdom older than the very earth he walked upon. She gazed at him with eyes that pierced through his soul and whispered, "Claim the sword, and you will unravel both worlds." But Juma wasn't the only one on a dangerous journey. As the princes scoured the seas for treasures, each more treacherous than the last, a deadly game of politics was brewing back in Odom's palace. The queens whispered among themselves, and their agents plotted to eliminate their rivals, unaware that the ocean had its own plans. Just before we dive deeper into this epic tale, we'd love to know where you're watching from. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow, we've got an extra special story lined up for you, and you definitely won't want to miss it. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the kingdom of Odom. The great palace stood tall on a hill, its walls as old as the kingdom itself. The air was thick with tension, and the people knew that change was coming. King Zubri, the ruler of Odom, was dying. His once strong hands now trembled, and his voice, which had commanded armies and nations, was barely a whisper. In the grand throne room, 6 princes stood before their father, each one proud and determined, yet uncertain of what the future held. They were born of noble mothers, each with a claim to the throne, but only one could inherit the crown. The room was silent as Zubri's weary eyes scanned his sons. "Listen closely," the king's voice rasped. "I am not long for this world. You each have a right to the throne, but this kingdom cannot be divided. The gods demand a wonder to prove who is worthy. Return with a treasure worthy of the gods, and you shall rule Odom. But know this, the greatest treasures often come at the greatest cost." The princes exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of their father's words sinking in. Juma, the warrior prince, clenched his fists, his eyes burning with determination. He would be the one to rule. He had always believed that the crown belonged to him, and now was his chance to prove it. "You are each to embark on a journey," Zubri continued, "and seek the treasures that will show the gods your worth. But beware, my sons, not all treasures are what they seem." The tension in the room grew thick as the princes bowed before their father, swearing to return with a treasure that would secure their place as the ruler of Odom. As they left the throne room, the sound of their footsteps echoed in the corridors, each prince deep in thought. They knew the journey ahead would not be easy. But for Juma, there was only one treasure that could secure his claim, the sword of Alakan, a legendary weapon said to be forged by the river gods and hidden beneath the Gulf of Guinea. It was a symbol of power, and with it, Juma would rule. Juma stood at the edge of the great ocean, staring out over the vast expanse of water. His heart raced with anticipation. He had heard stories of the sword of Alakan, a weapon said to grant its wielder the strength of the gods. But where it lay, no one knew. Some said it was buried deep beneath the waves, guarded by powerful spirits of the sea. Others spoke of a great storm that protected the sword, an eternal tempest that no mortal could survive. Juma was not afraid. He was a warrior, trained in the ways of combat since he was a child. His body was strong, his mind sharper than a blade. But even he could not deny the power of the sea. It was a force beyond understanding, a realm where men were but ants before the tides. As he prepared to embark on his journey, his mother, Queen Amina, placed a hand on his shoulder. "Beware, my son," she warned. "The sea is not just a body of water. It is a realm of magic, and its inhabitants are not as they seem. There are creatures beneath the waves who can shape the fate of the world." Juma nodded, though he felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. He had faced many dangers before, and he would face this one too. With a final glance at his mother, he set sail, his heart set on the sword of Alakan. The journey was long, and the seas were unforgiving. The waves crashed against the sides of the boat, threatening to capsize it. The wind howled through the rigging, and the sky grew dark as a storm began to gather on the horizon. Juma gripped the wheel of the ship, steering it through the tempest with all his strength. The sea seemed to have a life of its own, twisting and turning with a malevolent will. Suddenly, the storm grew fiercer. Lightning flashed across the sky, and the waves rose higher, crashing over the ship. Juma's heart pounded in his chest as he struggled to keep the ship afloat. But then, through the roar of the wind, he heard a voice, a sweet, melodic voice calling out to him. "Prince Juma, you must not continue. The path ahead is filled with peril. Turn back before it is too late." Juma froze. He had heard the voice, clear and undeniable, despite the howling wind. He turned, searching the sea, but saw nothing. Then, as if rising from the depths, a figure appeared, a mermaid, her long hair flowing like seaweed, her skin shimmering in the dim light. "I am Azira," the mermaid said, her voice soft yet commanding. "I am the guardian of the seas, and I warn you, Prince Juma, the sword of Alakan is not meant for men. It holds the power to destroy the balance between the worlds of land and sea. If you claim it, the consequences will be dire." Juma stared at Azira, his heart racing. She was the most beautiful creature he had ever seen, with eyes as deep as the ocean and a presence that seemed to command the very waves themselves. But her words struck him like a dagger. "The gods have spoken," Juma said, his voice steady. "I must claim the sword. Only then will I have the power to rule my kingdom." Azira shook her head. "The gods may have spoken, but they have not foreseen the cost of your ambition. The sword was never meant for mortals. It is a symbol of unity between the land and sea, and it must remain where it is." Juma felt a pang of doubt, but his resolve hardened. He had come too far to turn back now. "I will take my chances," he said, gripping the wheel once more. "I will claim the sword, and I will rule." Azira's expression softened, and for a moment, Juma thought he saw a flicker of sadness in her eyes. "You are a brave prince," she said, "but be warned, the sword is not just a weapon. It is a bond, and if you take it, the ocean will claim its due." With that, she disappeared beneath the waves, leaving Juma alone in the storm. The winds howled, and the rain poured down in torrents. Juma knew that the moment of truth was near. He steered the ship toward the heart of the storm, where the sword of Alakan was said to lie. The sea seemed to part before him, and in the distance, he saw it, the glowing shape of the sword, its hilt gleaming in the darkness. But as he reached out to claim the sword, the water surged upward, as if alive. The ocean roared in fury, and Juma was thrown from the ship, his body plunging into the depths. Juma awoke in the cold embrace of the ocean, the sound of waves crashing against his ears. His body ached, and his vision blurred. For a moment, he thought he had died, but then he saw her, Azira, swimming gracefully toward him. "You were foolish," she said softly, her voice carrying a mix of sorrow and regret. "The sword is not yours to claim." Juma's heart raced as he struggled to speak. I thought it was the only way." Azira's eyes softened. "There is always another way, Juma. The sword of Alakan is a bond between the realms of land and sea. If you take it, you will sever that bond, and the consequences will ripple across the world." Juma felt a deep sense of unease. He had always believed that power was the key to ruling, but now, he was not so sure. The ocean's depths seemed to hold secrets that were far greater than he had ever imagined. "You must choose," Azira said. "Claim the sword, and you will have the power to rule. But know this, the ocean will never forgive you, and neither will the land. Balance will be lost, and the world will be forever changed." Juma's mind raced. He had come this far, and the sword was within his reach. But the cost seemed too great. I cannot choose, he said, his voice shaking. I want to rule, but I do not want to destroy the balance. Azira smiled, her eyes filled with understanding. Then you must find another way, Juma. Power is not the answer. Love, loyalty, and unity, these are the true treasures. With those words, Azira vanished beneath the waves, leaving Juma alone with his thoughts. The sea was calm now, but Juma knew that his journey was far from over. While Juma struggled with the choice before him, far away in the palace of Odum, his brother Jabari, the cunning prince, was plotting his own path to the throne. Jabari had always been the most ambitious of the 6 princes. While Juma sought the sword of Alakan, Jabari sought a different treasure, the golden mermaid of the Niger. Legend had it that this mermaid could grant wisdom beyond the reach of mortal men. Jabari believed that if he captured the golden mermaid, he could control the future of the kingdom. But Jabari's plan was not one of love. He saw the mermaid as nothing more than a tool, a means to an end. He would not be swayed by the warnings of the ocean or the heart of his brothers. He would claim the throne, no matter the cost. As Jabari set sail on his journey, he had no intention of finding wisdom. He sought power, and nothing else would stand in his way. The air in the palace of Odum was heavy with the scent of incense, thick enough to choke the breath of even the bravest men. The royal courtyard, once filled with the vibrant sounds of life, now echoed with silence. Even the palace guards, accustomed to their unwavering duty, stood motionless, their gazes cast downward. Inside the grand hall, the mighty King Zubri, ruler of Odum, lay in his bed, frail and weakened by a sickness that had taken hold of his once indomitable body. His skin, once a deep bronze, now appeared paler than ever, as though the life was slowly being drained from him. Yet, his eyes, the eyes of a man who had seen the rise and fall of empires, still burned with the intensity of someone who had not yet given up on the world. "Call my sons," Zubri whispered, his voice barely a croak. The royal attendants, though somber, rushed to fulfill his command. Moments later, the 6 princes entered the chamber. Each one stood before their father, a mixture of sorrow and ambition glinting in their eyes. They had all grown strong and capable in their own right, trained to rule, each ready to take on the mantle of leadership. Juma, the warrior prince, was the first to speak. His broad shoulders and tall frame made him a formidable figure, a true son of the land. His mother, a powerful noblewoman from the western mountains, had raised him to be a skilled fighter, someone who could command armies and lead with unwavering resolve. "Father, you have always been our strength. The kingdom of Odum has thrived because of you. We will honor you, no matter what happens," Juma said, his voice deep and steady. Zubri smiled faintly, the corners of his lips twitching as if acknowledging his son's words, but his eyes were full of a sadness that was hard to ignore. "You are all capable sons, my pride and joy," the king began, his voice trembling slightly. "But Odum stands at the precipice of destruction. I can no longer lead you. The time has come to choose your fate." The princes exchanged uneasy glances. This was the moment they had all feared. Zubri continued, his voice growing stronger despite the frailty of his body. "I shall not simply name a successor, for Odum has always been ruled by the gods themselves. I declare a challenge, return with a wonder worthy of the gods, and you shall claim the throne." Zubri's voice rose, his eyes glowing with a fierce determination that belied his weakening condition. "But know this, great treasures come at great cost. The wonders you seek will test not only your strength but your very soul." Each prince stood taller, their minds racing with thoughts of what the king's words meant. The journey ahead would be perilous, and only one could claim the throne. As they gazed at their father, each of them wondered which of them would be the one to succeed him, and whether they were prepared to pay the price. "The gods will decide who is worthy," Zubri muttered, his eyes growing dim. "Go now, my sons. May the gods guide you." With that, Zubri fell silent, his eyes closing as if he had released the last of his breath. The princes stood in stillness, as the weight of his words sank deep into their hearts. The world outside the palace of Odin was alive with noise and chaos as the princes prepared for their quests. The marketplace was bustling with merchants shouting their wares, and the air was filled with the chatter of the people of Odin, who had gathered to watch their princes depart. The fate of the kingdom was now in their hands, and the tension was palpable. Juma stood at the edge of the city, overlooking the vast expanse of the land he had been born to protect. His hand rested on the hilt of his sword, the weapon that had been passed down through generations of warriors. It was a symbol of his strength, but it was not enough. To win the throne, he would need more than just skill in battle. He would need something truly extraordinary. As Juma made his way toward the docks, where the ships awaited, he thought of the challenge that lay ahead. His task was clear: to find the legendary sword of Alakan, forged by the river gods and hidden beneath the treacherous waters of the Gulf of Guinea. The sword was said to hold the power to unite the realms of land and sea, a power that would make him an unstoppable ruler. But Juma was not a fool. He knew that the journey would not be an easy one. The ocean was vast and unforgiving, and the sword of Alakan was not simply hidden, it was protected. No man could claim it without first earning its respect. As he stepped aboard the ship, Juma's heart beat faster with anticipation. The crew of seasoned sailors, familiar with the dangers of the sea, stood ready. The ship's captain, a weathered man with a long beard, greeted Juma with a nod. "You are the warrior prince, yes?" the captain asked. Juma nodded, his eyes narrowing in determination. "I seek the sword of Alakan," Juma said, his voice strong. The captain's expression darkened. "Many have sought it. Few have returned." Juma clenched his fists, the weight of the captain's words settling heavily in his chest. He had heard the stories, the sailors who had ventured into the Gulf, never to return. But Juma was different. He had been raised to face any challenge, and this quest would be no different. As the ship sailed into the open water, Juma felt a strange pull in his chest, a connection to the vast ocean that stretched before him. It was as though the sea itself was calling him, beckoning him toward something he could not yet understand. The days at sea were long, and the weather grew unpredictable. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, and the winds began to howl, a sure sign of an approaching storm. The crew worked frantically to secure the ship, but the storm came faster than they had anticipated. The waves crashed against the sides of the ship, and the sky was filled with flashes of lightning. Juma stood at the bow, gripping the edge of the ship as the winds threatened to tear it apart. The captain shouted orders, but it was clear that they were at the mercy of the storm. Suddenly, a strange voice rang out over the roar of the wind. It was soft, like a whisper on the breeze, but it carried with it a power that made Juma's heart race. "Help!" the voice pleaded. "Help me!" Juma turned, his eyes scanning the dark waters. For a moment, he thought he had imagined the voice, but then he saw it, a figure rising from the sea. A woman, her hair flowing like a river of silver, emerged from the waves. Her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and her skin shimmered like the scales of a fish. She was no ordinary woman, she was a mermaid. Without hesitation, Juma dove into the water, his instincts guiding him toward the mysterious figure. The moment he touched the ocean, he was engulfed by the cold depths, but he did not falter. The mermaid reached out to him, her hand grasping his tightly as she pulled him beneath the waves. The storm above raged on, but in the depths of the sea, there was calm. The mermaid led him deeper and deeper, her powerful tail propelling them through the water with ease. Juma could hardly believe what he was witnessing. He had heard the tales of the mermaids, but never had he imagined that one would save him. "Why did you help me?" Juma asked, his voice barely a whisper as he struggled to keep his breath. The mermaid turned to him, her eyes filled with a sadness he could not understand. "The ocean is not a place for humans," she said softly. "But you are different. You have been chosen." Juma frowned, his mind racing. Chosen for what? And by whom? The mermaid gazed into his eyes, as though searching his very soul. "I am Azira," she said. and I will help you find what you seek. But be warned, Prince, what you desire comes at a great cost." The waters were warm around Juma as Azira led him deeper into the ocean. He could feel the pull of the depths, the way the sea seemed to hum with ancient power. His body was heavy with the weight of the water, but Azira moved effortlessly, her tail slicing through the currents with grace. "Why are you helping me?" Juma asked again, his voice rising above the sound of the waves. Azira's eyes glowed in the murky depths, her gaze penetrating and intense. "The oceans have seen many things, Juma. They know your heart." She paused for a moment, her silver hair floating like an ethereal cloud around her. "But you must understand, the seas and the land have always been separate. If you take the sword of Alakan, you will shatter the delicate balance between the two realms. The consequences may be irreversible." Juma felt a cold shiver run down his spine, though he could not tell if it was the chill of the sea or something more profound. The thought of destroying the balance between land and sea troubled him deeply, yet his desire to claim the throne for his people, the kingdom he had vowed to protect, was stronger. His mind wavered, torn between the responsibility of his birthright and the weight of the mermaid's warning. "What am I supposed to do?" he asked quietly. "If I don't take the sword, the throne will go to one of my brothers. They will tear this kingdom apart. We need the power." Azira hesitated, then swam closer to him. She reached out and gently touched his face, her fingers cool against his heated skin. Her touch was soft, but it sent a surge of energy through him, and for a brief moment, he felt the weight of the ocean's power flood into him. He could feel the wisdom of the deep, the ancient knowledge of the water and its creatures. It was as though the sea itself was speaking to him. "You think that power will give you control over your destiny," Azira said softly. "But power alone is not what makes a king. It is the love and unity of those who follow you. If you take the sword without understanding its true meaning, you will rule over nothing but ashes." Juma closed his eyes, the words echoing in his mind. He felt the ocean pulse around him, as if it were alive with its own thoughts, its own feelings. Azira had warned him of the cost, and now he understood that the sea had its own will. The power of the sword could destroy everything he loved if misused. When he opened his eyes again, Azira was gazing at him, waiting for his response. Juma had always been a warrior, a man of action, but now, in this moment, he felt uncertain. His heart pulled him in two directions. Could he really let go of his ambition for the sake of balance? "I want to protect my kingdom, Azira. I want to save my people from the bloodshed that is coming. But, if the price is too high, I will not take the sword. What should I do?" Azira's lips parted, and she nodded slowly. "I cannot give you the answer, Juma. Only you can decide." She looked around them, as if scanning the vast ocean. "But there is another way. The sword is not the only thing that can bring peace. Perhaps you do not need to conquer the sea to unite the realms." Her gaze softened. "The land and the sea have always been linked, just as you and I are now. You must seek the truth in the depths of your own heart. The answer lies within you, not in the sword." Juma nodded slowly, though his mind was still clouded with doubt. How could he be sure? How could he know which path would bring the peace he sought without causing more harm? He had come so far, his journey had only just begun, but the choices before him seemed more difficult than he had ever imagined. "I will think on this," Juma replied quietly. Azira smiled, her expression filled with understanding. "Take your time, Prince. But remember, the ocean waits for no one. Your destiny is calling you, and you must answer in your own way." With that, she began to swim away, her tail flicking behind her like a silver streak in the water. Juma watched her go, the weight of her words pressing heavily on his heart. While Juma pondered his choices beneath the waves, far from the sea's tranquility, his brother Jabari, the cunning prince, was setting his own course. Jabari's eyes gleamed with ambition as he made his way to the northern reaches of Odom, a land known for its dense forests and hidden lakes. Jabari's quest was different from Juma's. Where Juma sought a weapon that could grant him dominion over the sea, Jabari sought the golden mermaid of the Niger. It was said that she possessed wisdom beyond mortal comprehension, the knowledge of the ages. Jabari's mind raced with possibilities. If he could capture the golden mermaid, he would have the keys to the future. Her wisdom would allow him to control not only the throne of Odom but the destiny of the entire kingdom. For years, Jabari had been the master of manipulation. He had learned from the most powerful sorcerers and had mastered the art of persuasion. If there was one thing he knew, it was how to get what he wanted. But this quest, unlike the others, was not just about power, it was about knowledge. The Golden Mermaid was not a creature to be tamed. She was not a mere trophy to be displayed at court. To gain her favor, Jabari would need more than just cunning. He would need to understand her, to delve into the mysteries of the sea, just as he had done with the many other beings he had manipulated in the past. As he journeyed deeper into the forest, he came across an old woman who lived alone by a sacred lake. She was said to have once spoken to the Golden Mermaid and knew her secrets. Jabari approached her with the utmost respect, for he knew that gaining her favor would be his first step toward capturing the elusive mermaid. "Good woman," Jabari began, his voice smooth like silk. "I have come to seek your wisdom. It is said that you know how to find the Golden Mermaid. I offer you riches, power, whatever you desire. All I need is your knowledge." The old woman looked at him with a deep, knowing gaze. "You seek wisdom, young prince, but wisdom comes at a price. The Golden Mermaid will not be so easily swayed. She is a creature of the deep, untouched by mortal hands for eons. Her heart is not so easily won." Jabari smiled, confident in his abilities. "I do not fear what I cannot control. I will find a way." The old woman chuckled softly. "Perhaps. But remember, Jabari, some knowledge is too powerful to be wielded by mere mortals. Be careful what you wish for." Ignoring her warning, Jabari pressed forward. He had no time for caution. The throne awaited, and nothing, not even the warnings of an old woman, would stand in his way. While Jabari pursued his ambition with ruthless determination, Bomi, the scholarly prince, was quietly navigating a different path. He was driven not by power, but by the thirst for knowledge. His quest led him to the sunken city of Azarim, an ancient city that had been swallowed by the sea centuries ago. According to legend, the city housed the lost chronicle of the ancestors, a tome that contained the wisdom of the first rulers of Odom, including secrets about the ancient bond between humans and mermaids. Bomi had always been a lover of history, but he understood that in order to rule wisely, one must understand the past. His quest was not about capturing an elusive treasure, but about unraveling the mysteries of Odom's ancient history, secrets that could grant him unparalleled wisdom, and in turn, a stronger claim to the throne. He stood on the edge of a cliff, overlooking the vast expanse of the ocean. The waves lapped gently against the shore, and the wind carried the salt of the sea. In the distance, the hazy outline of the sunken city rose from the depths. The city had been lost for so long that few still believed in its existence. But Bomi knew better. He had pored over ancient texts in the royal library, deciphering fragments of stories about the city that had once flourished before the sea claimed it. "The Lost Chronicle," he whispered to himself. "It holds the knowledge of the first kings, the secrets of the mermaids, the truth that can change everything." Bomi knew that the journey ahead would be perilous. He had read about the dangers of the sunken city, how it was said to be guarded by the spirits of the past, and how anyone who sought its treasures risked being lost forever in the depths of the ocean. But for Bomi, the risks were necessary. His mind burned with the need for understanding, and he could feel the weight of his mission deep within him. The answers he sought could reshape the future of Odom. He donned a diving mask and strapped a leather pouch to his waist. Then, with a deep breath, he waded into the water, feeling the cool embrace of the ocean as it swallowed him whole. He descended into the depths, guided only by the faint glow of his torch and the distant memory of the city's ancient ruins. The underwater world was alien to Bomi, its quiet beauty both awe-inspiring and eerie. He passed by schools of fish that darted through the water like silver streaks, and the occasional shadow of a massive sea creature loomed in the distance. As he swam deeper, the city's remains began to take shape, crumbling stone structures, shattered statues, and broken pillars half buried in the sand. It was as if the city was frozen in time, waiting for someone to unlock its secrets. Bomi swam closer, his heart pounding with anticipation. He was nearing the heart of the sunken city, where the lost chronicle was said to lie hidden. But as he approached the largest building, something caught his eye, a glimmering figure darting through the ruins. His heart skipped a beat. Was it a mermaid? He followed the figure, his curiosity piqued. The creature was fast, but Bomi's determination was greater. He finally cornered the shimmering form in the shadow of an ancient column. It was a mermaid, her golden scales catching the light of his torch. Her eyes were deep pools of wisdom and mystery, and she regarded him silently, as though she had been waiting for him. "I knew someone would come," she said in a voice that seemed to echo from the depths. "The time is upon us." Bomi's breath caught in his throat. You're the one guarding the lost chronicle." The mermaid nodded, her long hair swirling around her like a dark cloud. "I am the keeper of the ancient secrets. Only those who seek knowledge with an open heart may find the truth." Bomi's mind raced. He had read about the keepers of the city, powerful mermaids who protected the city's treasures. But this was no ordinary mermaid. She was a being of immense power, her presence filling the water with an otherworldly energy. "I seek the lost chronicle," Bomi said, his voice steady despite the awe he felt. "It holds the key to understanding our past, and the future of Odom. I need to know its secrets." The mermaid's eyes darkened. "The chronicle is not just a book of knowledge, Prince. It holds the history of our people and the ancient bond between the sea and the land. To read its pages is to unlock a power that could alter the balance of the world." Bomi felt a chill run down his spine. "I understand the risks, but I cannot rule without understanding the past. The throne will be lost to one of my brothers unless I know how to unite the kingdoms. I need the chronicle." The mermaid studied him for a long moment, as if weighing his words. Then, she slowly reached out and handed him a small, weathered scroll. The parchment was inscribed with intricate symbols that seemed to shimmer and shift before his eyes. "The truth is not always what we expect," the mermaid said cryptically. "But you are free to seek it. Take the scroll, Prince, and may it guide you in the choices you will soon face." Bomi took the scroll carefully, feeling its weight in his hands. He bowed to the mermaid, gratitude filling his heart. "Thank you." But before he could swim away, the mermaid stopped him. "One last thing, Prince," she said. "Do not underestimate the power of love. It is the key to all things, both in the sea and on land. Love can bind the two realms, but it can also destroy them." Bomi's eyes widened at her words. He had not expected such a message. He turned to speak, but the mermaid had already vanished into the depths, leaving him alone with the scroll. With a deep breath, Bomi swam to the surface, clutching the scroll tightly in his hands. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden light over the water. He had what he came for, but the road ahead was far from clear. What would the chronicle reveal? And what did the mermaid mean by her cryptic words about love? Far from the sunken city, Oba, the sorcerer prince, was in the throes of his own dark ambition. His journey had led him to the treacherous coasts of the eastern shores of Odom, where he sought the Eye of Nia, an artifact of immense power. This gem was said to be infused with the blood of the ocean witch, Nia, and it held the potential to grant its wielder control over both the sea and the land. Oba had always been drawn to the dark arts, and the Eye of Nia was the pinnacle of sorcery. With it, he would be able to conquer not just Odom, but all the realms of the known world. The power to command the seas, the winds, and the creatures of the deep would be his. But the price of such power was steep. The ocean witch's blood had been cursed by the gods long ago, and anyone who wielded the eye would risk falling under its malevolent influence. It was said that the eye could drive a person mad, warping their mind and twisting their soul. But Oba did not fear the curse. He believed that he could control the eye, that its power would be a tool for his ascent to the throne. He had always craved power, and now, he was willing to do anything to claim it. As Oba neared the shores of the cursed isle where the eye was said to rest, a strange feeling began to settle in his chest. It was a feeling of foreboding, as though someone, was watching him. But Oba shrugged off the sensation, his eyes fixed firmly on his goal. "I will not fail," he muttered to himself, stepping onto the rocky shore. He was not alone, however. The mermaids of the area had long known of the eye's power and had guarded it with their lives. As Oba ventured deeper into the island, he could feel their presence, silent watchers lurking beneath the waves. Suddenly, a mermaid emerged from the water, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "You seek the eye," she said, her voice carrying a deep, ancient power. "But know this, Prince, there are things that should not be disturbed. The eye belongs to the sea, and it will not be wielded by those who seek to control it." Oba's eyes narrowed. "I will do whatever it takes to obtain it. Stand aside, mermaid, or I will make you." The mermaid's expression remained unchanged. "You do not understand what you seek. The eye is not a mere tool for power, it is a force, a living entity. It will consume you, Oba, just as it has consumed those who came before you." Oba laughed, his confidence unshaken. "You are wrong. I am the one who will control it." But the mermaid only watched him silently, her gaze filled with pity and warning. The night was heavy with tension as Bomi sat alone in his chamber, the scroll from the sunken city unfurled before him. The dim light of a single candle flickered, casting long shadows across the room as he pored over the cryptic symbols etched into the ancient parchment. The more he studied the writing, the more the words seemed to come alive, shifting and rearranging themselves, as if they were testing his understanding. Bomi's heart raced as the symbols began to form recognizable shapes. It was as though the scroll was speaking to him, revealing secrets that were lost to time. The pages held more than just knowledge of the past, they carried hidden truths about the royal bloodline, about his ancestors' dealings with the mermaids, and about the true nature of power in Odom. "Knowledge is both a gift and a curse," he whispered, recalling the mermaid's warning about the dangers of unbridled ambition. It was clear now that the knowledge he sought would not be easy to digest, nor would it be without its own price. The first section of the scroll spoke of an ancient ritual, one that involved the merging of human and mermaid blood. It was said that such a union would grant the offspring immense power, far beyond what any single ruler could ever wield. But it came at a cost. The scroll described a prophecy, one that foretold the rise of a ruler who would bridge the divide between land and sea. This ruler would be the one to unite the kingdoms and unlock the secrets of both realms. Bomi's fingers trembled as he read the final line of the prophecy. "The one who merges the blood of land and sea will hold the throne, but at the cost of the heart." Bomi's mind swirled. Could this prophecy be referring to the mermaids, and to the strange connection he had felt when he met the mermaid at the sunken city? Was his fate tied to the waters in some way he couldn't yet understand? But there was no time for answers now. He had to continue. The next part of the scroll revealed something far more chilling, a map, intricately detailed, that led to a forgotten temple buried deep within the jungle of Odom. This temple was said to house the heart of the sea, a mystical artifact of untold power. It was a heart that could control the tides, command the ocean's creatures, and bend the laws of nature itself. Bomi's pulse quickened as he realized the implications. The heart of the sea was not just a tool of power, it was the key to understanding the ancient bond between mermaids and humans. Whoever controlled it would have dominion over both realms. And yet, the scroll made it clear that no one had ever returned from the temple alive. He looked up, lost in thought. The answers to his kingdom's future, and his own, lay within the jungle, guarded by forces both human and supernatural. To retrieve the heart of the sea would mean facing dangers beyond his comprehension. But Bomi was no stranger to danger. He had made it this far by relying on his intellect, and he wasn't about to stop now. Determined, he rolled the scroll tightly and secured it in a pouch, fastening it to his waist. He would set out at first light. Meanwhile, Oba stood on the rocky shore of the cursed isle, his mind consumed by the Eye of Nia. The mermaid's words echoed in his mind, but he refused to let them deter him. Power was what he craved, and the eye was the key to obtaining it. Nothing else mattered. The island was eerily silent as Oba made his way deeper into the heart of the island, following the faint glow of the eye. The air was thick with the scent of salt water and decay, and the wind whispered through the twisted trees like the voices of forgotten souls. Oba's hand tightened around the hilt of his sword as he ventured deeper, determined to claim what was rightfully his. After what felt like hours of navigating through the dense jungle, Oba finally reached the ancient altar where the Eye of Nia lay. It was an imposing stone structure, covered in moss and etched with strange runes. In the center of the altar, a large crystal pulsed with a faint, eerie light, the Eye of Nia. Oba approached the altar with reverence, his fingers trembling with anticipation. As he reached for the eye, a low growl sounded from the shadows. Oba spun around, his heart racing. From the darkness emerged a creature of the sea, a massive serpent, its scales gleaming like polished obsidian. It was a guardian of the eye, an ancient protector summoned by the ocean witch herself. The serpent hissed, its eyes glowing with a cold, malevolent intelligence. "You seek the eye, but you do not understand its power," the creature rumbled, its voice like the roar of the ocean. "The eye does not grant control, it enslaves. It will take everything from you." Oba stood his ground, his gaze unwavering. "I do not fear you, creature. I fear nothing. The eye will be mine." With a swift motion, Oba grabbed the eye, and the moment his fingers made contact, a surge of dark energy coursed through his body. He gasped as the power filled him, as if the very essence of the sea had entered his soul. For a brief moment, he felt invincible, unstoppable. But then, the power twisted, turning dark and insidious, clawing at his mind. The serpent let out a triumphant hiss. "You are already lost." Oba staggered, clutching the eye tightly. His vision blurred, and the whispers of the sea began to echo in his mind, voices that promised him power, but at a terrible cost. The curse of the eye was beginning to take hold. Oba's pulse raced as he fought to retain control. He had made his choice, and there was no turning back now. As dawn broke over the kingdom of Odom, Bomi made his way into the jungle, guided by the map from the Lost Chronicle. His mind was focused on the journey ahead, but in the depths of his heart, he could not shake the feeling that someone was watching him. The jungle was thick with vegetation, the air heavy with humidity. Birds of every color called from the trees, and the ground was soft beneath his boots. Bomi moved silently, aware that the jungle was both a sanctuary and a trap, hiding its dangers in plain sight. As he ventured deeper, the sounds of the jungle faded, replaced by a stillness that was almost unnatural. The trees grew taller, their trunks twisted and gnarled. The path became less clear, as though the jungle itself was trying to dissuade him from continuing. But Bomi pressed on, knowing that he had little time to waste. The heart of the sea awaited him, and with it, the answers he sought. But as he ventured deeper into the jungle, he began to feel a strange sense of unease, a sense that he was not alone. Suddenly, from the shadows, a figure emerged. It was a woman, draped in a flowing gown made of seaweed and shells. Her eyes were the color of the ocean, and her long hair shimmered like the tides. She was a mermaid, and she had been waiting for him. "The heart of the sea is not for mortals," she said, her voice like the sound of waves crashing against the shore. "To seek it is to invite destruction." Bomi's heart raced. "I seek knowledge, not power. I must understand the truth of the sea and the land. It is the only way to save my kingdom." The mermaid gazed at him with ancient eyes. "Then you must understand the cost. The heart of the sea is not a gift, it is a curse. It will consume you, just as it has consumed those who came before you. Bomi swallowed hard, but his resolve remained. I will face the cost. The future of Odom depends on it. The mermaid smiled softly, her gaze filled with sorrow. Then follow me, Prince. But be warned, the journey ahead will test your very soul. With that, she turned and vanished into the depths of the jungle, and Bomi followed, knowing that his destiny was intertwined with the ocean's mysterious power. Bomi's heart raced as he followed the mermaid deeper into the jungle. The air grew thicker, and the trees seemed to grow closer together, their dense canopies blocking out the sun. Shadows moved in the corners of his vision, and the sounds of the jungle seemed to mute, leaving only the faint rustle of leaves underfoot. Every step he took felt as though it carried him further into a realm where the laws of nature were bent, where the line between land and sea blurred. The mermaid moved with graceful confidence, her long hair trailing behind her like a silken wave. Bomi tried to keep up, his thoughts consumed by her cryptic words. The heart of the sea was a curse, she had said, but what did that truly mean? He had heard the legends, of course. It was said that the heart had the power to control the oceans, to command storms, and even to shape the very destiny of kingdoms. But every story also spoke of the terrible price one would pay for wielding such power. He didn't care. His kingdom was on the brink of collapse, and he would do whatever it took to save it. His brothers, especially Jabari, were determined to claim the throne at any cost. The only way to stop them was to be the first to return with a treasure worthy of their father's dying words. The mermaid led him to a clearing, a strange and otherworldly place bathed in the soft glow of phosphorescent plants. At the center of the clearing stood an ancient stone structure, its surface covered in intricate carvings of sea creatures and mythical beings. A deep pool of water surrounded it, its surface reflecting the pale light of the plants above. The air felt thick with magic. "This is the Temple of the Heart," the mermaid said, her voice low and reverent. "Here lies the key to the sea's power." Bomi approached the pool, his heart pounding. He could feel the weight of destiny pressing on him, the sense that his every choice from this moment onward would shape the future of Odom. He gazed into the water, and the surface rippled, revealing an image of the heart of the sea, a glowing, ethereal crystal resting upon a stone pedestal beneath the waves. "It's there," Bomi whispered, his voice filled with awe. "Yes," the mermaid said, her voice tinged with sadness. "But the heart is not something to be taken lightly. The sea will test you, Prince. It will judge whether your heart is pure enough to wield its power." Bomi swallowed, uncertainty creeping into his chest. "What do I have to do?" The mermaid's eyes met his, her expression grave. "You must enter the waters and retrieve the heart. But be warned, the sea will not allow just anyone to take it. Only one with a true purpose, one who seeks to restore balance between land and sea, may claim it. The sea has its own will, and it will not bow to ambition alone." Bomi nodded, determination shining in his eyes. "I have no choice. I must take it." Without another word, he stepped into the water, feeling the coldness seep through his boots as the depths enveloped him. The mermaid watched him closely, her gaze unreadable. As Bomi sank deeper into the pool, the water grew colder, and the pressure around him seemed to increase. He descended further, his heart pounding in his chest as the light from above began to fade. And then, he saw it. The heart of the sea glowed in the darkness, casting an ethereal light that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the ocean itself. It was a large crystal, its surface covered in swirling patterns that resembled the tides and currents of the sea. It radiated a power unlike anything Bomi had ever felt, a power that seemed to resonate with his very soul. He reached out, his fingers brushing the surface of the crystal. The moment his skin made contact, a surge of energy coursed through him. His vision blurred, and for a moment, he felt as though he was being pulled into the very heart of the ocean. The sea whispered in his mind, ancient voices speaking in a language he couldn't understand. His body trembled, and he fought to keep his grip on the heart. Suddenly, the water around him began to churn violently, pulling at him with a force that threatened to tear him apart. The sea was angry. The heart was rejecting him. A voice rang out, sharp and clear. "You are not worthy." Bomi gasped, his head spinning. The mermaid's voice echoed in his mind, but it was no longer comforting. It was a warning. "You must leave," she urged. "The heart knows your heart, Prince. If your intentions are not pure, the sea will destroy you." But Bomi refused to let go. The heart was his only chance. He had come this far, and he would not fail now. With every ounce of strength he could muster, Bomi wrenched the heart free from its pedestal. The water exploded in a torrent of rage, and Bomi was thrown backward, tumbling through the dark depths. His body slammed against the rocky walls of the pool, and he could feel the sea's fury attempting to drag him under. In that moment, something shifted within him. A deep, primal connection to the ocean itself surged through his veins. He could feel the sea's heartbeat, its pulse matching his own. The energy of the heart flowed through him, and for the first time, Bomi understood the true power it held. With a final surge of strength, Bomi broke through the surface of the water, gasping for air. The storm around him subsided, and the waters calmed. He clutched the heart of the sea tightly in his hands, his body shaking with exhaustion and adrenaline. The mermaid stood at the edge of the pool, her eyes wide with shock. You have done it." Bomi nodded, his chest heaving as he caught his breath. "The heart is mine." But as he gazed at the glowing crystal in his hands, he couldn't shake the feeling that the sea was watching him, waiting for him to make his next move. Juma stood on the edge of the beach, staring out into the horizon. His quest for the sword of Alakan had brought him to this desolate shore, the place where the river gods had hidden their most powerful weapon. The wind howled around him, and the waves crashed against the rocks with an intensity that seemed to mirror his inner turmoil. He had come so far. He had survived storms, faced treacherous foes, and fought through countless trials. But now, standing at the edge of the sea, he could feel the weight of his decision pressing down on him. His thoughts turned to Azira. The mermaid he had met along his journey, the one who had saved him from the storm, had become more than just a guide. She had become his ally, his confidant, and, though he dared not admit it, his love. But their love was forbidden. The sea and the land were not meant to merge, and their bond threatened the very fabric of the world. Juma closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He had promised Azira that he would not let ambition blind him, that he would not let the pursuit of power destroy what they had. But the sword of Alakan was the key to his claim to the throne, and the weight of his kingdom's future rested on his shoulders. His thoughts were interrupted by a voice behind him. "Are you ready, Juma?" He turned to see Azira standing in the shadows, her form half submerged in the waves. Her beauty took his breath away, but there was a sadness in her eyes, a sadness that mirrored his own. "I don't know if I am ready," Juma replied softly. "But I have no choice." Azira stepped forward, her gaze never leaving his. "The sword is yours to claim, but remember this, power has a price. The sea and the land cannot be united without sacrifice." Juma nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had already sacrificed so much for this moment, and yet he knew that the true cost was yet to come. Azira took a step closer, her voice barely a whisper. "If you choose the sword, Juma, know that you may lose me." The words hit him like a wave crashing against the shore. His heart clenched with sorrow. He had never imagined that his quest for power would lead him to this moment, standing on the precipice of a decision that would define his life, his kingdom, and his love. "Azira," he said, his voice breaking. "I can't lose you." Her eyes filled with tears as she reached out to him. "Then choose wisely, Juma. The path you walk will change everything." With that, she turned and disappeared into the sea, leaving Juma alone with the weight of his choices. The sword was within reach, but so was the love of a mermaid. And as the winds howled around him, Juma knew that whatever choice he made, it would alter the fate of both the land and the sea forever. Juma stood on the beach, the crashing waves against the rocks deafening in their fury. His mind was a tempest of its own, the weight of Azira's words echoing through him with a force that threatened to break him. He had come this far in his quest, driven by ambition, and now, standing at the edge of the sea, the consequences of his pursuit seemed too overwhelming to bear. The sword of Alakan lay ahead, resting in a rock formation, just beyond the reach of the wild surf. The sword, said to hold the power of the ancient river gods, gleamed under the moonlight, its golden hilt encrusted with jewels that sparkled like stars. It was the key to his claim on the throne of Meriva, a symbol of divine right, capable of bending the will of both the gods and men. But Juma knew the tales, legends told of the sword's devastating power, its ability to destroy or elevate the soul of the one who wielded it. He had imagined this moment countless times in his mind, his hands wrapped around the hilt of the sword, his brothers kneeling before him, submitting to his rule. But now that he stood before it, he hesitated. The sea's restless waves seemed to whisper, urging him forward, pulling at his very spirit. He could hear Azira's voice again, soft but firm, "The sea and the land cannot be united without sacrifice." Her words burned in his chest, a warning and a promise, and Juma knew in his heart that this sword would cost him more than just the blood of his enemies. He turned toward the ocean, searching for Azira's figure in the waves, but the water was silent, as though the sea itself was holding its breath. His heart ached with the thought of her. The love they shared was forbidden by the very nature of their existence, he, the heir to a human throne, and she, a being born of the ocean's depths. The land and the sea had long been at odds, their destinies too tangled to ever be fully reconciled. And yet, the bond between them had grown stronger with every passing day. Juma swallowed hard. Did he dare to take the sword, knowing it would come at the cost of his love? Could he live with himself as a ruler of a kingdom built on power gained from the destruction of something so pure? Juma, the voice came again, this time more faint, more distant. Azira. She was calling him. But he couldn't bring himself to turn away from the sword. He took a deep breath, his fingers curling into fists. His brothers, with their bloodthirsty ambition, would stop at nothing to claim the throne. And if he didn't take the sword, they would. Meriva would fall into chaos, and the kingdom that his father had built would crumble. This was the only way to restore balance, to save the future of his people, no matter the cost. Without looking back, Juma stepped toward the sword. As his hand closed around the hilt, the world seemed to explode in a flash of light. The sword hummed with power, a deep, resonating force that coursed through his body. He felt the pulse of the ocean, the rush of the tides, and the thundering roar of the river gods. It was overwhelming, like a flood of energy that surged through every vein, filling him with both strength and sorrow. It was as though the very essence of the ocean had entered him, binding him to its ancient will. But with the sword came the weight of responsibility. The weight of the future of Meriva, of his brothers, of the land and the sea, all pressing down upon him. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through his chest, and Juma gasped, stumbling back. His vision blurred, and he collapsed to his knees. The sword pulsed in his hand, its energy burning him from the inside out. No, this cannot be how it ends. His mind screamed for relief, but the sword held him captive, its power demanding he submit. And then, through the pain, he heard it, the sound of waves crashing, not just against the rocks, but against his very soul. It was Azira's voice, louder now, calling him to break free. To remember who he truly was, not just as a prince, but as a son of both land and sea. "You cannot hold the sword without the heart," she whispered, her voice now clear in his mind. Juma's hand clenched around the hilt of the sword, and for a moment, he thought of his father, the dying emperor who had urged him and his brothers to seek the heart of the sea. The heart, what did it truly mean? And how could it be more powerful than the sword of Alakan? "Azira," he whispered hoarsely, his voice breaking. I can't let go." Her voice was soft but resolute. "You don't have to. You must choose the path that leads to the union of both realms, or let the sword bind you to the land forever." Juma's breath quickened. He could feel his heartbeat in his ears, the world spinning around him as the energy of the sword threatened to consume him. He was torn between love and duty, between the land and the sea. With a final, defiant cry, Juma made his choice. He tore the sword from his hand, casting it aside into the waves. At that moment, the pain ceased. The world around him settled, and the air felt lighter. The sea's voice faded, but Azira's presence lingered in his mind. He stood on the edge of the shore, trembling but resolute. The heart of the sea would be the key, not the sword. The union of the land and sea, of his love for Azira and his duty to his kingdom, would be his true legacy. But what would become of his brothers? What of the kingdom? And would the sea allow him to claim the heart now that the sword had been rejected? The questions loomed in the dark, unanswered, as Juma turned toward the water, ready to face whatever came next. Back in the heart of Mariva, Bomi felt the weight of the heart in his hands, its pulse quickening with every beat of his heart. The jungle around him was silent, the air thick with the magic of the sea. He had made it back, but at what cost? The heart of the sea had accepted him, but the journey to this point had left him hollow, filled with questions and doubt. His thoughts turned to the royal court, to his father's dying words. What did this power truly mean for him, for his kingdom, and for his future? And more importantly, what price would he have to pay to wield it? As he held the heart close, the distant sound of thunder rumbled across the sky. The storm was coming. The storm was like no other Bomi had ever seen. Dark clouds gathered overhead, swirling with a fury that seemed unnatural. The air crackled with energy, thick and electric. It was as though the earth itself was rebelling against the very idea of power, rejecting those who dared seek it. The heart of the sea pulsed in Bomi's hand, its rhythmic beat like a whisper of warning in his ear. He gripped it tighter, his mind racing. The journey to retrieve the heart had been long, filled with dangers he had barely escaped. But it was not the journey that haunted him now, it was what he had discovered along the way. The heart of the sea was more than just an artifact, it was a key to something far greater, something that transcended human understanding. Yet, the more he studied it, the more he realized that its power came at a price. Power, true power, was never free. The cost will be more than you can imagine, Prince Bomi, the old shaman had warned him when he first set out. To wield the heart of the sea is to bind yourself to the ocean's will. The sea does not give lightly, and its debts are not paid in gold. He had thought the old man's words were simply the ramblings of a superstitious elder. But now, as the storm raged around him and the heart pulsed with an almost sentient energy, he understood. The sea was not a force to be controlled. It was a force to be respected. The wind howled louder, whipping his cloak around him. The ground beneath him trembled as if the world itself was shifting. And then, from the depths of the storm, he saw it. A shape rising from the waves, a massive figure with gleaming scales, hair like flowing seaweed, and eyes that glowed with an eerie, otherworldly light. Azira. Bomi's breath caught in his throat. She stood before him, her beauty as haunting as the sea itself. The woman who had become a symbol of the forbidden love between land and sea, the one who had once saved Juma from the storm, now stood before him, her gaze filled with something that resembled both sorrow and pity. "You have the heart," she said, her voice soft but heavy with meaning. "But what will you do with it?" Bomi swallowed hard. He had studied the heart, learned its significance, but in that moment, he realized just how little he truly understood. The sea, with all its mysteries, was far more than any ancient text or scholar could capture. It was alive, its will as unpredictable as the tides. "I will bring peace to the kingdom," Bomi said, though even as he spoke the words, doubt began to creep in. Could peace truly be achieved with this power? Could any of them, he, Juma, or even Jabari, bring the kingdom together without destroying everything they loved? Azira's eyes softened, and for a moment, she seemed almost human. "You believe that power can fix everything," she said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "But true peace comes from understanding, not from force. The heart can heal, but it can also wound. You must ask yourself, Prince Bomi, are you willing to pay the price for such power? Bomi lowered his eyes, unable to meet her gaze. He wanted to say that he had the answers, that he could save his kingdom and restore order to the chaos his father's death had left behind. But deep down, he feared the truth. He feared that his own ambition might blind him to the consequences of his actions. Azira stepped closer, the sea swirling around her feet. The choice is not yours alone, Prince Bomi, she said, her voice like the rising tide. The fate of your kingdom is tied to the balance between land and sea. What you do now will echo across generations. And remember, no treasure, no power, no kingdom is worth losing yourself. Bomi felt the weight of her words, as if they were sinking into his soul. But before he could respond, the storm intensified, and Azira's figure began to dissolve into the mist. She was gone as quickly as she had appeared, leaving Bomi standing alone on the shore, the heart still pulsing in his hand. Was she a vision? Or had she truly come to warn him? He shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. The storm had subsided, but a new storm had begun to churn inside him. The heart of the sea was not just a tool for power, it was a test, a challenge to the very nature of his character. Could he use it for good? Or would he, like the others, succumb to the temptation of using it for personal gain? No, he whispered to himself. I will not fail. But even as he spoke, a sense of dread settled over him. He knew that the road ahead would be fraught with danger, not just from his brothers and their quests, but from forces far beyond his understanding. Jabari, the youngest of the princes, had always been the most cunning. While his brothers pursued treasures of magic and wisdom, Jabari's mind was fixed on something more practical: control. He had no illusions about the nature of power. Power was not granted by gods or mystical artifacts, it was seized. And Jabari intended to seize it. His quest, unlike his brothers, was not for the heart of the sea or for a sword of legend. No, Jabari had set his sights on something far more attainable: the Golden Mermaid of the Niger. Legends told of her ability to grant wisdom beyond mortal comprehension, wisdom that could make any man the ruler of a kingdom. And Jabari had no doubt that with such wisdom, he could outmaneuver his brothers and claim the throne for himself. The Niger River was vast, its waters flowing from the highlands to the coast. Jabari knew the river well, having studied its currents, its hidden tributaries, and its secrets. He had no fear of its dangers. He had never been one to fear anything. He journeyed deep into the heart of the river's delta, where the water was thick with mist and the trees hung heavy with vines. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and rotting wood, the sounds of the river's creatures echoing in the distance. But Jabari was not afraid. He had studied the stories of the Golden Mermaid, heard whispers of her powers from those brave, or foolish, enough to seek her out. They said she dwelled in the depths of the Niger, beneath the surface, and that to capture her was to hold the future in one's hands. Jabari would do whatever it took to capture her. And with her, he would capture the throne. As Jabari delved deeper into the jungle, he could feel the pull of the river growing stronger. The mist thickened, and the trees seemed to grow closer, as if watching him, waiting for him to make the wrong move. The river is not kind to those who seek its treasures, a voice warned. Jabari turned sharply, his hand instinctively going to the dagger at his belt. The voice was soft, almost musical, yet it carried a weight of authority that made his blood run cold. From the shadows of the trees, a figure stepped forward, a woman with eyes that glowed like the moonlight, her skin shimmering with a strange, golden light. She was beautiful, and her presence was both serene and terrifying. She was the Golden Mermaid of the Niger. "You seek me, Prince Jabari," she said, her voice smooth as the river's current. "But why? What is it that you desire?" Jabari straightened, trying to hide the unease that gripped him. He had prepared for this moment, but nothing could have prepared him for the presence of the Golden Mermaid herself. "I seek power," Jabari said, his voice steady. "Wisdom that will make me the greatest ruler of all. I will stop at nothing to claim the throne." The golden mermaid's lips curled into a smile, though her eyes remained cold. "And what are you willing to give in exchange for this power?" Jabari's heart skipped a beat. He had not expected to be asked this question. He had expected the mermaid to bend to his will, to offer him her wisdom without question. But now, standing before her, he realized that power always came with a price. "Anything," he said, though doubt gnawed at him. "Anything you desire." The mermaid's smile grew wider, her golden eyes glinting with something that could only be described as predatory. "Very well, Prince Jabari. You may have the wisdom you seek. But know this, nothing comes without a cost." Jabari nodded, too eager to turn back now. "What is the price?" The golden mermaid's smile faded as she raised one hand, her fingers moving in a slow, deliberate gesture. "The price is your soul." Jabari's blood ran cold as the words hung in the air. His heart hammered in his chest, and his mind raced to make sense of what the golden mermaid had just said. "The price is your soul." The words echoed in his mind, louder and louder, until they drowned out all other thoughts. He had come to this river seeking power, seeking wisdom, believing that nothing would stand in his way. But now, standing before the golden mermaid, a creature of both beauty and terror, he realized the truth: power had a price. A price far greater than he had ever imagined. Jabari clenched his fists, his gaze fixed on the mermaid. His mind screamed for him to turn away, to leave the river and return home to his brothers, to find another way to seize the throne. But his ambition, burning like a fire inside him, refused to let him go. He wanted the throne. He needed it. The power it promised was too great to walk away from. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "What does that mean?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "What do you want from me?" The mermaid's golden eyes glimmered with amusement, as if she found his question naive. "Your soul is the price for the wisdom I will grant you. It is not something that can be measured by gold or treasures, Prince Jabari. Your soul is the essence of who you are, the very core of your being. If you choose to accept my offer, you will gain everything you seek. But it will cost you the one thing that makes you human." Jabari's thoughts spiraled. He had never believed in such things, soul contracts, ancient bargains with spirits, or curses, but standing here, in the heart of the river's mist, facing the mermaid's piercing gaze, he couldn't ignore the gravity of her words. His soul. What did that even mean? Could he truly be willing to part with it for the power he desired? His hand trembled as it rested on the hilt of his dagger, but the fire in his chest burned brighter than ever. "Wisdom," he thought. "Wisdom will make me the greatest ruler. It will be worth the cost. It has to be." "I accept your offer," Jabari said, his voice unwavering despite the uncertainty clawing at him. "Grant me the wisdom I seek, and I will give you what you ask." The golden mermaid's smile returned, and she stepped closer to him, her movement fluid and graceful, as though the very water obeyed her every step. She reached out, her fingers brushing the air between them, and Jabari felt a chill that seemed to seep into his bones. His heart pounded faster, as though it recognized the weight of the decision he had just made. "As you wish, Prince Jabari," the mermaid whispered, her voice like the soft murmur of the river. "Your soul will be mine, and in return, you will have the knowledge of the ages." In that moment, Jabari felt an overwhelming surge of power wash over him. It was as if the very river had poured its secrets into him, its wisdom, its mysteries, its endless depths. Images flashed before his eyes, visions of kingdoms rising and falling, of rulers who wielded power and lost it, of wars and peace, of lives shaped by the decisions of those in power. And through it all, Jabari saw himself, seated on a throne, his rule unquestioned, his power absolute. The wisdom was his. He understood the flow of the world now, the ebb and flow of power, the secrets that had eluded kings and queens for centuries. He was no longer just a prince. He was a master of fate itself. But then, as quickly as it had come, the flood of wisdom receded, leaving Jabari standing in the same spot, breathless and disoriented. The mermaid's eyes shone with triumph as she observed him, her smile faint but knowing. "You have received what you asked for," she said softly. "Now, you must live with the consequences." Jabari's heart twisted in his chest. He felt a strange emptiness, a hollow void that had not been there before. The wisdom, the power, the knowledge, all of it surged through him, but at what cost? What had he truly lost in exchange for it? He reached out, touching his chest, as though he could somehow grasp the part of him that was now gone. The mermaid had taken it, his soul, his essence. It was a price he had willingly paid, but now that he felt the absence, he realized the truth. Power came at a steep cost, and the consequences of his ambition were only just beginning. Back in the kingdom of Meriva, the air was thick with tension. Word had spread of the prince's quests, each one pursuing their own path toward the throne. But none knew what was unfolding deep in the Niger River, where Jabari had made his fateful bargain with the Golden Mermaid. None knew that the youngest prince had just gained the power to change the fate of the entire kingdom, at a cost that would haunt him forever. Juma, the warrior prince, had returned to the capital after his own journey to the sea, where he had met Azira, the mysterious mermaid. The experience had changed him, made him question everything he thought he knew about love, loyalty, and the weight of the crown. His heart was torn, and his mind was clouded with doubts. Could he truly rule a kingdom built on lies, betrayals, and the endless pursuit of power? Or was there another way? Meanwhile, Bomi, the eldest prince, had returned with the Heart of the Sea, the mystical artifact that had the potential to unite the kingdom. But like the others, he was torn. The heart's power was immense, but with it came the realization that ruling the kingdom would not be as simple as wielding a powerful weapon. The heart was a test of character, a test that would require him to decide what kind of ruler he wanted to be, and whether he could resist the temptation to use it for his own gain. And then there was Jabari, who, with his newfound wisdom, began to see the kingdom in a way that no one else could. His mind was sharp, his understanding of the political landscape unparalleled. But as he walked through the palace halls, he felt the weight of his choice pressing down on him. His soul was gone, taken by the Golden Mermaid in exchange for the power he had craved. He was no longer the same man who had set out on his quest for the throne. He was something else, something far more dangerous. As the princes prepared for their final confrontation, they would each have to confront the choices they had made, the power they sought, and the price they had paid. And in the end, the kingdom of Meriva would be changed forever, whether it was for the better or for the worse, only time would tell. The kingdom of Meriva sat at the edge of a precipice, its fate uncertain, its future hanging in the balance. As the princes prepared for the inevitable clash, the winds of change began to stir once more, this time not just from the land, but from the very sea itself. The storm had only just begun. The morning mist hung thick in the air as the princes gathered at the royal palace, each wearing the marks of their trials. Juma, with his heart torn between duty and love, stood tall, his eyes distant and clouded. Bomi, the scholar prince, carried the weight of the Heart of the Sea, a treasure that pulsed with an ancient power only he could truly understand. Jabari, once a man of pure ambition, now seemed a shadow of his former self, his eyes cold and unreadable, as if the wisdom he had gained had come at the cost of his very humanity. But there was a new presence in the kingdom, one that no one had anticipated. The sea had not forgotten. Azira, the mermaid who had saved Juma and bound herself to him, emerged from the depths of the Gulf of Guinea, her arrival marked by a violent crashing of waves against the shores of Meriva. The ocean seemed to respond to her summons, as though it recognized her as a force of its own, both ancient and eternal. Juma stood at the edge of the palace, gazing out toward the horizon where the ocean met the sky. He had felt Azira's presence before, but this time, it was different. The air was heavy, charged with an energy that sent shivers down his spine. Azira was no longer just a distant figure in his memories, she was here, and with her, the sea itself had come to claim what it had long ago set in motion. Bomi, who had always sought knowledge and wisdom, turned to Juma. "Do you feel it? The sea is calling to you. It has always called to you." Juma's eyes met Bomi's, his face drawn with the weight of the decision he had yet to make. "The sea has always been a part of me," he replied quietly, "but I cannot ignore the truth anymore. I love her, Bomi. Azira and I, we are bound by something older than our kingdoms, something deeper than our desires for the throne." Bomi nodded, understanding that the bond between Juma and Azira was no mere accident. It was a force of nature itself, a power that could either save or doom them all. But Jabari, standing at the other end of the palace courtyard, clenched his fists. The wisdom he had gained from the golden mermaid pulsed through his veins like a fire, and though he could not see the future as clearly as he had hoped, he felt a gnawing suspicion in his gut. The sea was not an ally, it was a force that would never be controlled, and it had its own plans for the kingdom. The princes had each pursued their own paths, thinking they could win the throne with the treasures they had gained. But the true power had always lain not in the treasures themselves, but in the decisions they would make in the face of an ancient force that cared little for their ambitions. And now, as the storm clouds gathered on the horizon and the sea churned with unseen fury, it was clear that the prince's fates were intertwined with the will of the ocean, and Azira herself was its messenger. The waves crashed violently against the shore, as though the ocean itself had come alive in its fury. From the depths of the Gulf of Guinea, Azira emerged, her form more regal and commanding than Juma had ever seen. She glided towards the shore, her long hair flowing behind her, her scales glittering in the sun as she moved. The wind whispered of things unseen, and the very air seemed to tremble with her presence. Juma stood frozen, torn between his duty as a prince and the love he felt for the mermaid who had saved him and shown him a world beyond his own. Azira stopped before him, her golden eyes meeting his, and in that moment, he knew that nothing would ever be the same. "Juma," she said, her voice soft but full of power. "You have come far, and your love for me has brought you here. But this is not just about us. The fate of your kingdom is tied to the sea's will. Your brothers do not understand this. They have sought power without understanding its cost." Juma nodded, the weight of her words sinking into his heart. His brothers, each driven by their own desires and ambitions, had no idea what they were up against. The sea was not something to be tamed or bargained with. It was a force of nature, as ancient and unforgiving as the land itself. "The throne," Azira continued, "is not a prize to be won. It is a responsibility, and the sea demands its due. It will not be content with just a ruler, it demands unity between land and sea, between the two worlds that have been at odds for so long." Juma's heart ached with the truth of her words. His kingdom, his people, they were divided. His father, King Zubri, had known this, which was why he had sent them on their quests. But none of them had fully understood the depth of the sacrifice required. "What must I do, Azira?" Juma asked, his voice hoarse with emotion. "How can I bring peace between the land and the sea? How can I unite them?" Azira's gaze softened, and she reached out to touch his cheek. "It is not just your strength that will unite them, Juma. It is your heart. You must choose the kingdom of your soul, not just of your blood. The throne you seek is not of power or wealth, but of wisdom and love. Only when you choose love over power will the sea listen." Juma's mind raced. Love over power. Was it truly that simple? Could he give up the throne, the power he had always dreamed of, for the woman he loved and the unity that could bring peace to his people? His heart ached at the thought. But as he looked into Azira's eyes, he knew that this was a choice he could not avoid. Meanwhile, Jabari, whose own journey had led him to the depths of power and wisdom, stood at the edge of the palace, watching them. He had always believed that he could control everything, that wisdom was the key to everything he desired. But now, as he watched Juma and Azira, something in him began to crack. Could wisdom alone give him what he wanted? Or was there more to ruling a kingdom than he had ever imagined? As Juma and Azira shared a moment of understanding, a distant cry broke through the stillness of the air. The storm, which had seemed to abate for a brief moment, was now growing fiercer, as if the sea was reacting to the unfolding drama. The winds howled, and the sky darkened, a storm unlike any other. Bomi stepped forward, his face grim. The sea is not just reacting to you, Juma. It is reacting to all of us. It knows that something is coming, something far bigger than any of us. The kingdom's fate is tied to the balance between the land and the sea, and we are all players in this struggle. Juma turned to Bomi, his face filled with uncertainty. What do you mean? What is coming? The sea is not just testing you, Bomi said quietly. It is testing all of us. We must be prepared for what lies ahead. And with that, the princes, now more united by their shared understanding of the sea's power than by their rivalry for the throne, prepared for the storm that would change their kingdom forever. But the storm was not just a force of nature, it was a sign. A warning that the balance between the kingdoms of land and sea was about to be shattered. And only the princes, united in purpose, could decide whether their world would sink or rise with the tides. The winds howled, and the storm's fury grew louder as the princes gathered in the heart of the palace. The path to the throne was clear now, clearer than it had ever been. But the choices they would make would not only determine who would rule Meriva, they would decide the fate of both the land and the sea. As the kingdom teetered on the brink, the question remained, would love or power prevail? The night stretched long over the kingdom of Meriva, a kingdom caught between two worlds, one of the land, and the other of the sea. The palace stood quiet, a stark contrast to the storm raging outside. It was as if the world itself had held its breath, waiting for the moment when the truth would emerge, when the fate of the kingdom would be decided. Inside the palace, the 6 princes gathered in the great hall, each one bearing the marks of their individual quests. Juma stood by the tall, arched windows, staring out at the tempest. His thoughts were a whirlwind, his heart torn between his love for Azira and the responsibilities of the throne. His brothers, once rivals, now seemed like mere shadows of their former selves. They, too, were shaken, though for different reasons. The sea had tested them all, and in its tests, none had emerged unscathed. Jabari, ever the cunning prince, stood apart from the others, his eyes narrowed in thought. He had gained wisdom beyond his years, but at what cost? The Golden Mermaid had shown him the intricacies of the world, the delicate balance between power and control. But Jabari had learned that some things could not be controlled, not even with the greatest wisdom. The mermaid had warned him of the dangers of hubris, of trying to manipulate forces beyond one's understanding. Yet, he had never truly listened. Bomi, the scholar, was the least shaken. His heart was calm, for he had always believed that knowledge could guide him. But now, even he felt the weight of the decision before him. The lost chronicle of the ancestors had spoken of the union between humans and mermaids, of the sacred bond that could either save or destroy the world. But knowledge alone was not enough. He had come to understand this too late. Oba, the sorcerer prince, had sought the eye of Nia, believing that forbidden magic would grant him the power he sought. Yet, as he gazed out at the storm, his eyes revealed a flicker of doubt. He had touched the dark magic of the ocean, and now he understood the price of that power. The eye of Nia was not a tool of strength, it was a curse. The dark forces he had tampered with had left their mark on him, and he could feel them gnawing at his very soul. The storm outside was more than just a natural event, it was the sea's response to their presence, to the choices they had made. It had grown fiercer, as if challenging them to confront the truth. Each of them had sought a treasure, believing it would grant them the power to rule. But the sea had shown them that true power lay not in what they sought, but in what they were willing to sacrifice. As the princes pondered their fate, the palace doors swung open with a sudden gust of wind, and Azira stepped into the room. Her presence filled the space like a tidal wave, and for a moment, no one spoke. The mermaid was no longer the distant, otherworldly being they had once imagined. She was a force, one that embodied the sea's power, its mystery, and its danger. Her eyes locked with Juma's, and for a brief instant, the world outside seemed to fade away. The tension in the room was palpable. The sea had called to Juma, and now, Azira was here to deliver its message. "You have come far," Azira said, her voice both soft and commanding. But the path before you is not an easy one. The throne you seek is not yours to claim, not unless you understand the cost of your desires. Juma stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. What must I do, Azira? Tell me how to unite the kingdoms, to save my people. I am ready to give up everything, my claim to the throne, my wealth, my power, if it means peace. Azira's gaze softened, but there was a sadness in her eyes. The throne is not a prize, Juma. It is a burden. The kingdom you seek to rule is divided, and it will take more than love to heal it. The sea has long been a part of this land, and now it demands its due. You have come to me seeking answers, but the truth is not what you think. Juma's heart sank. What truth, Azira? What have I missed? The sea does not care for your kingdoms or your titles, Azira said, stepping closer to him. It only seeks balance. The land and the sea are tied together, and neither can exist without the other. But your kingdom has forgotten that. The land-bound people have forgotten the ancient pact that once existed between the mermaids and the kings of Mariva. You must restore that balance, Juma. Only then will peace come. Juma's mind raced. The ancient pact, he had heard stories of it growing up, but they were always just that, stories. Legends passed down through the ages. But now, standing before him, Azira was telling him that the fate of the entire kingdom depended on a truth he had never fully understood. Then what must I do? Juma asked, his voice desperate. How can I restore that balance? Azira's gaze grew distant, as if she were looking beyond the walls of the palace, beyond the storm itself. The answer lies not in the treasures you have found, but in the choices you will make. The sea does not seek a king, it seeks a leader who understands the power of unity. You must choose to unite the kingdoms, to heal the rift that divides them. But that choice will come at a cost. The sea will not allow you to rule without sacrifice. Juma felt a cold shiver run down his spine. What must I sacrifice? Azira's eyes met his, and for the first time, there was a hint of sorrow in her expression. You must choose, Juma. Will you choose the throne, and risk the destruction of both the land and the sea? Or will you choose love and unity, and give up the power that has driven you your entire life? The room fell silent as the weight of Azira's words settled over them. The princes stood motionless, as if they were waiting for Juma to make the choice that would determine their fates. Juma's heart raced. He had come this far, fought so hard, and endured so much. And now, in this moment, he was faced with the most difficult decision of his life. He had always thought the throne was the ultimate prize, the symbol of his power and legacy. But now, he wasn't sure what mattered more, the throne or the love he shared with Azira, the unity between the land and the sea, the balance that the world so desperately needed. His brothers, too, were looking at him, waiting for him to make the first move. They, too, were facing their own dilemmas. Would they follow Juma's lead? Or would they, too, make choices that would change the course of history? Juma took a deep breath, his gaze still locked with Azira's. I choose unity, he said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. I choose the balance between land and sea. The storm outside seemed to pause, the wind holding its breath. The sea, as if in response, calmed. Azira's eyes softened with relief. Then we have a chance, Juma. But remember, the path ahead will be long, and the sacrifices will be great. The sea will not forgive easily, nor will your people. You must stand firm, for your kingdom's fate depends on you. As the storm subsided, a new dawn began to break over the kingdom of Mariva. The princes, once rivals, now stood united in their resolve. The fate of the kingdom, and of the sea, was in their hands. But the true test was yet to come. The winds had changed. The storm had passed, but the world of Mariva was not the same. The choices the princes had made would forever alter the course of their kingdom and their world. Juma had chosen unity, but that decision came with a price. The sea had agreed to a fragile peace, but peace was never easy to maintain. With the ancient balance restored, the princes would have to confront the forces that had been set in motion, forces both seen and unseen, that would test their loyalty, their strength, and their very souls. And as the sun rose over the horizon, the princes knew that their journey was far from over. The morning light bathed the kingdom of Mermaid in a soft golden hue, a stark contrast to the turmoil that churned beneath the surface. As the sun rose, so too did the challenges that awaited Juma and his brothers. They had made their choice, but the path forward was fraught with uncertainty. The fragile peace they had won was still vulnerable, and many in the kingdom were not yet ready to accept the changes that had been set into motion. In the heart of the palace, the 6 princes gathered once more. Juma stood at the head of the table, his posture regal yet burdened. The weight of the crown seemed heavier than ever, but it was not the physical weight that troubled him, it was the knowledge that true leadership demanded more than ambition. It demanded wisdom, sacrifice, and, above all, the courage to make decisions that would impact not only themselves but the very future of their kingdom. Bomi, the scholar prince, was the first to speak. His voice, calm and measured, echoed through the room. Juma, you have chosen unity, but the people will not easily follow. There are many who still believe that the throne is a symbol of power to be seized, not a responsibility to be shared. We must convince them, but we cannot do so with words alone. We must show them that the path you have chosen is the right one. Juma nodded, his gaze firm. I know, Bomi. But how do we convince those who are so entrenched in their beliefs that they cannot see beyond their own desires? The answer lies in action, Bomi replied. We must restore the ancient pact between the land and the sea. We must prove that unity is not a weakness, but a strength. And to do so, we will need to speak with Azira again. The sea holds the key to our future, but it is not enough to merely call on it. We must understand its ways. Oba, the sorcerer prince, spoke next. His voice was low and dark, laced with an edge of fear that had not been there before. The sea, it is a force beyond our comprehension. Azira's words may have given us a glimpse of what is to come, but I fear the consequences of meddling with such power. There are those who would use the sea for their own gain, twisting its magic to suit their ambitions. The Eye of Nia has already shown me the dangers of tapping into that power. We must tread carefully. Jabari, the cleverest of the princes, tilted his head as he listened. But is it not true that power, when wielded correctly, can be a tool for change? If we are to unite the land and the sea, we may need to draw upon the ancient magic of the ocean. If not the Eye of Nia, then what other source do we have? Juma's eyes narrowed. No more forbidden magic, Jabari. We've already seen the dangers of tampering with forces we do not understand. Azira has warned us. If we are to restore balance, we must do so with wisdom and restraint. The sea will give us what we need, but it will not tolerate greed. A long silence filled the room as the princes absorbed Juma's words. They knew that their path forward would be difficult, but they also knew that the stakes had never been higher. The kingdom of Mermaid was on the edge of a precipice, and whether it would fall into chaos or rise to greatness depended on the choices they made now. Bomi spoke again, breaking the silence. We cannot undo what has already been done. The people will resist change, but they will follow strength. If we show them that we are united, not just as brothers, but as leaders who are willing to sacrifice for the good of the kingdom, then they will follow. Juma stood tall, his resolve hardening. Then we begin today. We will go to the sea, seek Azira's counsel, and make the first steps toward healing the rift that divides us. We will show the kingdom that the throne is not a prize to be fought over, but a responsibility to be shared. Oba's gaze darkened. And what of the forces that do not wish to see this unity? What of those who will stop at nothing to maintain the status quo? Juma's jaw clenched, his eyes fierce. We will face them, Oba. Together. The kingdom may be divided, but we are not. The sea may be a mystery, but we will uncover its secrets. And we will restore the balance, no matter the cost. With that, the princes left the great hall, each of them carrying the weight of the future on their shoulders. The storm had passed, but another, far greater one was brewing on the horizon. The winds of change were blowing, and they would have to navigate them carefully, for their journey had only just begun. The journey to the sea was long and arduous, but the princes were determined. They traveled in silence, each lost in their own thoughts as the landscape shifted from the lush forests of the kingdom to the barren cliffs that overlooked the vast ocean. The sea, once a distant and mysterious force, now seemed all too real, a force that would either guide them to salvation or pull them under in its depths. As they reached the shore, the waves crashed violently against the rocks, as if warning them to turn back. But Juma stood firm, his heart steady despite the tempest that raged within him. He had come to the sea for answers, and he would not leave without them. Azira was waiting for them, her form emerging from the depths of the water like a vision from another world. Her eyes, the color of the ocean itself, locked onto Juma's, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. The princes stood in awe of her, not just because of her beauty, but because they knew that she held the key to their future. "You have come," Azira said, her voice like the whisper of the wind. "I see that you are ready to face what is to come. But be warned, Juma, what you seek will not be given easily." Juma stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "Azira, we have chosen unity. But the kingdom is divided. The people are not ready to accept what we have chosen, and many seek power above all else. We need your help to restore the balance." Azira studied him for a moment, her gaze piercing. "The balance has already been disturbed, Juma. It will not be so easily restored. The sea has already spoken, and it has seen the truth of your heart. But the path ahead is fraught with danger. Those who seek power will stop at nothing to maintain control. And the sea will not tolerate those who seek to manipulate it." Juma swallowed hard. "We understand the risks, Azira. But we must try. For the sake of the kingdom, we must unite the land and the sea." Azira's expression softened, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Very well. I will help you, Juma. But know this, the sea does not forgive those who take its power lightly. It will test you. It will demand sacrifices. And only those who are truly worthy will emerge with the strength to restore the balance." Juma nodded, his heart heavy but resolute. "We are ready, Azira. We will face whatever comes, together." With that, Azira stretched out her hand, and the waters parted before them. A path of shimmering light appeared, leading deep into the heart of the ocean. It was the path they would have to walk to restore the balance, and to face the forces that sought to tear their world apart. The journey was not over. In fact, it was just beginning. The path before them was both beautiful and terrifying. The shimmering waters sparkled in the moonlight, but beneath the surface, they could sense the power of the ocean, an ancient, untamable force that neither land nor sea could control. Juma and his brothers knew that they were walking a razor's edge. A step too far in either direction could result in their destruction. As they moved forward, the sea began to test them. The waves rose higher, crashing against the rocks with a force that threatened to sweep them away. The air grew thick with tension, as if the ocean itself was judging them, testing their resolve. Azira's voice echoed through the water, guiding them forward. "You have chosen the path of unity, but unity requires more than just words. It requires sacrifice. It requires trust. And most of all, it requires strength." Juma's heart pounded in his chest. He had chosen the path of unity, but now, in the face of the ocean's power, he wondered if he was truly ready. The storm raged around them, but they pressed on, each step bringing them closer to the truth they sought. And as the waves crashed over them, they knew that the greatest test was yet to come. The path was no longer clear. The shimmering trail that had once seemed to guide them now twisted and shifted, as though the very waters of the ocean were conspiring to confuse them. Juma felt the weight of the journey pressing on him more than ever. The storm had intensified, whipping the sea into a frenzy. The winds howled, and the waves surged with wild energy, threatening to overwhelm them. Azira's voice echoed through the tumultuous sea, both a beacon and a warning. You seek unity, but the ocean is not easily tamed. It has tested kings, queens, and empires alike. To find the heart of the ocean, you must first conquer the storm within yourselves. The princes, though shaken, remained resolute. Juma's brothers, each with their own strength and wisdom, had always been a source of support. But this trial, unlike any they had faced before, was not one they could win through force or strategy. It was a test of inner resolve, of understanding the nature of their bond and their commitment to the kingdom of Mermaid. As they advanced, the sea grew darker, the water swirling around them like a vast, ancient being awakening from a long slumber. The pressure was overwhelming, and even Bomi, whose calmness had always been a stabilizing force, looked uneasy. Oba's hand trembled, and Jabari's eyes darted nervously around him. The ocean had a way of unsettling the most confident of men. But it was Juma who felt the full weight of the trial. As he stared out across the tempest, he could almost hear the faintest whisper in his mind, a voice that felt both familiar and foreign. You seek unity, Juma. But can you truly unite the kingdom when you are so divided within yourself? He clenched his fists, shaking off the voice. He could not afford to falter now. Not when everything that mattered was at stake. With each step, he focused on the goal ahead, remembering Azira's words, trust, sacrifice, strength. Suddenly, the storm seemed to intensify, a colossal wave rising up before them, taller than any they had seen. It crashed down upon them with a deafening roar, sending them sprawling into the cold, merciless waters. Juma felt the sharp sting of the sea as it pulled him under, darkness enveloping him. The current threatened to drag him down into the abyss, but something inside him ignited, a burning desire to hold on, to fight through the storm. Juma reached out, his hands desperately grasping for anything solid. His brothers were scattered, their shouts barely audible above the thunderous roar of the ocean. He couldn't see them, but he knew they were fighting, too. They had to survive this, together. The water surged around him, pushing and pulling him in every direction. Just as he thought he could not hold on any longer, a pair of strong hands gripped his arm and yanked him upwards. Gasping for air, Juma was pulled to the surface. Through the crashing waves, he saw Azira, her eyes gleaming with a strange intensity. She was the calm in the center of the storm. You must find the strength within yourself, Juma, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. This is your trial. Not against the sea, but against your own fears. The kingdom of Mermaid needs a ruler who understands the balance of power and the importance of trust. Can you be that ruler? Juma looked around at his brothers, each struggling against the powerful forces of nature, but also fighting their own inner turmoil. He realized then that this trial was not just about surviving the storm, it was about learning to work together, to trust each other fully, even in the most dire of circumstances. I understand now, Juma said, his voice hoarse but steady. Unity does not mean one man's strength, but the strength of all of us working together. Azira smiled, her eyes softening. The heart of the ocean lies within each of you, Juma. It is the understanding that the sea and the land, the sky and the earth, cannot exist without one another. Only through balance can true strength be achieved. As the storm began to subside, the ocean calmed, its waters settling into a tranquil stillness. The brothers, exhausted but determined, gathered together once more, their bond now stronger than ever. They had passed the test, not through force, but through unity, trust, and the willingness to sacrifice for the greater good. With the storm behind them, the princes and Azira made their way to the heart of the ocean, where the water shimmered with an ethereal glow. The sea had revealed its power, but now, it would reveal its secrets. Azira led them deeper, into a cavern hidden beneath the surface. The walls of the cavern were lined with ancient symbols, glowing faintly in the dim light. Juma felt the weight of history pressing down on him as they descended. This place was old, older than the kingdom itself, a testament to the deep connection between the land and the sea. At the center of the cavern stood a large stone pedestal, upon which rested an intricately carved orb. It glowed with a soft, pulsating light, as though it contained the very essence of the ocean. Azira approached the pedestal, her eyes filled with reverence. "This is the heart of the ocean," she said. "It holds the wisdom of the sea, the knowledge of those who have come before you, and the power to restore balance to your world." Juma stepped forward, his heart pounding. "What must we do?" Azira met his gaze, her eyes filled with both caution and hope. "You must choose. The heart of the ocean can grant great power, but it also demands great sacrifice. The balance of your kingdom depends on the choice you make now." Juma looked to his brothers, each of them standing at his side, their eyes filled with determination. They had faced the storm together, and now, they would face the truth of their kingdom's future together. He knew the weight of the decision. Power could unite or destroy. Trust could either heal or divide. He had learned that only through balance could they restore their kingdom. Juma stepped forward, his hand reaching out to touch the glowing orb. As his fingers brushed its surface, a surge of energy coursed through him, filling him with a deep sense of understanding. The truth of the ocean, of the land, of the people, and the rulers, all of it flooded his mind in an overwhelming rush. He knew what he had to do. "We choose unity," Juma declared, his voice steady and strong. "For the kingdom, for the sea, for all of us. We will restore the balance, not through power alone, but through understanding and trust." As his words echoed through the cavern, the orb began to glow brighter, its light spilling out in all directions. The sea itself seemed to respond, the water shifting, calming, as if acknowledging the choice they had made. And in that moment, Juma knew that they had passed the greatest test of all. They had chosen not to rule over the kingdom, but to guide it. Together, with the wisdom of the sea and the strength of the land, they would restore the balance, and with it, the hope for a united future. The journey back to the kingdom was quiet, but the weight of the moment was not lost on any of the princes. They had chosen a difficult path, one that would demand everything they had. The sea had given them its wisdom, but now, they would have to apply it to the world they had left behind. As they returned to the shores of Mermaid, the people gathered to greet them. The air was thick with anticipation, but also with fear. The kingdom had been divided for so long, and now, the princes were returning, bearing the weight of the heart of the ocean and the promise of a new future. Juma stepped forward, his brothers by his side. The silence was heavy, but he knew that it was time to speak. "We have returned," Juma began, his voice clear and commanding. "We have seen the truth of the sea and the land, and we have chosen unity. The throne is not a prize to be fought for, but a responsibility to be shared. We will work together, as brothers, as rulers, to restore the balance of our kingdom." The people watched in stunned silence, but slowly, the tension began to lift. The princes had returned, not as conquerors, but as leaders. Leaders who understood the importance of unity, of trust, and of sacrifice. The road ahead would be difficult, but with the heart of the ocean and the wisdom it had granted them, Juma and his brothers were ready to face whatever came next. And with that, the kingdom of Mermaid began its journey toward a new era, one built on the foundations of unity, trust, and the hope for a brighter future. The days that followed were filled with both challenge and hope. The people of Mermaid, having witnessed the unity of the princes, began to rally around the vision of a shared future. The conflict that had torn the kingdom apart for so long started to fade, and in its place grew a sense of camaraderie and collective purpose. The brothers, now united in their commitment to the throne, began to work together in ways they had never done before. Juma, who had once been a solitary warrior, found strength in the counsel of his brothers. Oba, whose wisdom had always been a guiding force, became the kingdom's strategist, helping to rebuild the fractured territories. Bomi, with his unmatched courage, led the efforts to restore the kingdom's military might, ensuring that Mermaid would never again be vulnerable to outside threats. Jabari, with his fierce loyalty and passion for justice, worked tirelessly to heal the wounds caused by the years of division. Even the people, once divided by fear and doubt, began to see the power of the brothers' unity. The villages flourished, trade routes reopened, and a sense of peace began to settle over the kingdom. But perhaps most importantly, the bond between the brothers grew deeper than ever before. They were no longer competitors for a throne, they were partners in the restoration of a kingdom. The final test came when a delegation from the neighboring kingdoms arrived, eager to see if the changes in Merriva were real. They came with skepticism, but as they witnessed the transformation of the land and the people, their doubts faded. The sight of the united princes, working side by side, spoke louder than any words ever could. It was then that Juma, standing before the council of neighboring rulers, made a final, crucial statement. The throne is not a seat of power, it is a seat of responsibility. We do not rule for ourselves, but for the people. Unity, trust, and understanding are the foundations of true leadership. It is through these that we will build not just a kingdom, but a lasting legacy. The delegation, moved by his words and the actions of the princes, agreed to formalize alliances, ensuring peace and prosperity for generations to come. And so, the kingdom of Merriva was restored, not through war or conquest, but through understanding, compassion, and the unwavering bond of family. The heart of the ocean, which had once seemed like an unattainable prize, had proven to be a symbol of the power of unity and sacrifice. The brothers had learned the most important lesson of all, that true strength lies not in ruling over others, but in working together for the greater good. Juma's journey, the trials he faced, and the ultimate victory were not just about defeating an enemy or claiming a throne. The true lesson was the power of unity and sacrifice. The brothers' willingness to put aside their individual ambitions for the good of the kingdom proved that greatness is not achieved through power alone, but through collaboration and understanding. In life, we are often faced with choices that challenge our values and our relationships. It's easy to become caught up in personal ambitions or pride. However, the true measure of a leader, a friend, or a family member is found in their ability to work together, to listen, to sacrifice, and to put others' needs above their own. True strength is not about being the strongest or the loudest, it's about understanding when to lead and when to follow, when to speak and when to listen, and how to bring people together for a common purpose. What do you think is more important for a leader, strength or unity? Do you believe that working together is the key to overcoming challenges, or is individual ambition the best way to lead? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey through the kingdom of Merriva. If you enjoyed the story and the moral lessons we explored, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future adventures. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more stories filled with magic, lessons, and unforgettable characters. Until next time, remember, true strength lies in unity, and together, anything is possible.